Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Explain of Thrones, the podcast all about Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Today we're going to be going over the entire Season 7, our thoughts, our likes, our dislikes, and as usual, how it relates to the books. So I'm going to introduce my guests here. I have on the line a returning favorite, Miss Robin Cabana.
Hey guys.
And then we have, straight from last week, Mr. John Michael Boubon.
You know nothing, Mike Snow.
And we have a new guest, Miss Kristen Hoyt. Kristen, tell everyone a little bit about how much you're into the books or not.
Oh my gosh. I read all 5 books like in a month and a half. The summer that book 5 came out.
Yes.
And then I watched the show obsessively. I watched it with my husband, I watched it with my dog, and yeah, we love it. Totally into it.
Yeah, dogs tend to love Game of Thrones, I've found.
Except for when like the direwolves are on the screen, or when horses are on the screen, my dog loses it. Otherwise,
yeah. Oh man. All right, guys. So since we don't really have an episode to start at the beginning of this time, let's just kind of freeform it. I'll go ahead and start with my overalls on the whole season. You know, I thought that they really did a really good job with the effects, and the actors are, as usual, on point. And the music, once again, something I haven't talked about this entire podcast is just how much I love the music. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was one episode, and I can't remember which one it was, but the music was like killer. Like, I can't remember which tune it was now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the same guy the entire series.
Yeah.
And he also did Westworld.
Okay.
And that one too, I feel like the music like took it up into another level.
Well,
No, go ahead.
what's really interesting about what they've done with the music is that it's just like 3 motifs that they just keep doing over and over, but manipulating them.
Yeah.
Like, as many possible ways as they can, they've used it.
Yeah,
Really
exactly.
Cool. As an appreciator of music, really cool to see just how they've shaped and colored the entire series over these 3 little musical ideas.
Yeah, and like
Right.
different houses will have themes. Obviously, the Lannisters have. Oh gosh, how am I blanking on my favorite song in the entire thing?
Oh,
The Reigns of Castamere.
Stark.
The what?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they play The Reigns of Castamere for all of the main Lannisters. I actually really love Stannis' theme. I'm sad that he's not around anymore, that we don't get to hear it. And I think my favorite, which no surprise to you guys, is probably the Greyjoy theme.
oh, God.
But it's just, it's so good. Just that, and when it gets like intense when something's happening to Theon.
Oh, Greyjoys.
So yeah,
so much. I've been waiting to tell you on this that I hate the Greyjoys because you love them so much.
I know, and we'll get into that for sure. But
Fine.
yeah, so that's all my likes. Dislikes, I'd say the writing as a whole. I mean, honestly, I do. I feel like pretty much
Don't be
every.
too nice, Mike.
Don't what?
Don't be too nice to them.
I feel like pretty much every single plot line, it could either should have been completely different, or if it was on the right track, could have at least been improved in ways. But that's just me. Why didn't someone else give their overalls?
One of my favorite things this season has just been the reunion. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reunions.
And also just like random like meetups of characters who, you know, like the Hound and Tormund and different characters finally being in the same place.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was, it's just fun, I think, as a fan of the show for that to happen. And the reunions as well. That was one of my favorite things this season. And the narrowing of the focus, finally bringing plot lines together, even though sometimes they didn't always work or it seemed a little too convenient. But I really did like that. Like you said, the action and effects were amazing this season.
Yeah, they really were.
I mean, just really, like, so intense and spectacular and just beyond anything you see anywhere else, I think. But I think at the cost of the story, and like the acting was great as always, and I just, one of my favorite moments was like when Jon Snow met the dragon. That was just like one of my favorite things in the whole series. I just loved that moment. I just thought it was just so perfect and just really cool. It was just a really cool moment.
Yeah,
so those are some of my favorite things this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think as a book reader, like there are so many things that I have been waiting to see, and now that we are not in like we're in new territory because we don't have the books to rely on so much, there are some things that like we hoped would happen, and like so that reaction, that meeting of Jon and the dragon, like you didn't know what was going to happen, but you were pretty sure it was going to happen, and realized it was going to be amazing, and it totally lived up to every expectation I had.
Yeah.
The one thing that I really loved this season is that right when it was getting just way too dark and like where we were all just going to curl into a ball and not get out until next week, like they had these really fun, campy moments. Like I can't stand Bran's character. I'm done with Bran.
Yeah, we've done a fair amount of shitting on Bran.
But one of my favorite scenes was when Sam Darley is sitting there and just like trolling him the whole time.
Yes.
It's this funny, witty banter that like we just needed this campiness. We needed it because the rest of it is so dark and everyone's wearing these dark clothes and everyone's so sad. And so I love that there were these moments that like, you know, were a little, you know, fan serving, but it was amazing. I'm not mad about it. What I am mad about and I'm still mad about is just the amount of like there's like time. Time doesn't matter. Travel doesn't matter. Space and time are not a thing.
Right.
As much as you might keep said that like Game of Thrones very much lives into very scientific, like it follows the rules of science. It does not follow space and time. It does what it wants. You know, how people get around. Euron has traveled around Westeros like how many times that season?
Yeah, in a few episodes.
Yeah, that was my gripe. Otherwise, I loved it. It was a great season.
Yeah, just real quick. We, you know, last episode was our longest episode. We talked the finale in and out and didn't manage to get to Sam and Bran's little interaction, which I loved.
Oh, yeah.
Because Sam was basically acting like the rest of the audience wants to react to Sam or to Bran. Like when he just kind of gives him the face like, oh, I don't know what that means. That was fantastic.
But like, doesn't want to stand for crazy Bran. Like, wants like, oh, that's cool. I think.
Yeah, you
crazy Bran
weirdo. John Michael, what about you? Your likes, dislikes?
I mean, people already mentioned the visual effects and the music and all things, so I can just probably pick out specific moments where they were really good. I think music-wise, the last 10 minutes of the first episode when Dany gets on, you know, Dragonstone.
Yeah.
They don't, there's absolutely no dialogue, and it's her theme song just building and building for 5 minutes as she walks to the ground and then goes into the throne room and looks at the throne but doesn't sit on it and goes right to the table.
Right.
I stood up in my chair and I was like, "You fuck yeah, Daddy!" You know, you know. So
sitting where Aegon the Conqueror sat.
Yeah, so that was like, I was so pumped, and afterwards I was just like, I'm so glad Game of Thrones is back, and it really, the music kind of, you know, hit that scene home for visual effects wise, and I can really lend my opinion to this because I do visual effects for television. So there's a lot of instances where I can I can just point out, like, that is absolutely fantastic. Throughout the series, visual effects-wise, they've nailed it every time, but a lot of the sea shots and kind of like the castle scenes, you can notice the green screen, because it would be like in their hair or...
Yeah, I felt like of all the sequences, the castle ones were the weakest visually. Like definitely the siege of Casterly Rock and the lack of a siege of Highgarden. It kind of felt like they had spent so much time and energy on the other scenes, you know?
Right, and that was all filmed in a tank on a set, so it doesn't have a lot of the natural lighting, and the wind and all that was fake. I mean, of course, it's all fake, but there was a discrepancy between reality and visual effects, and those are the ones that stood out in the earlier seasons. But for this season, there is probably one or two shots where I was like, not that great, but overall, I think absolutely fantastic. In particular, and it's just this season, I can say that all the exterior shots of the castles and the establishing shots, particularly Dragonstone and Casterly Rock, any cityscapes were... and you get to see... Casterly Rock, right? It was the first time we saw it.
First time we've seen it.
And that looked absolutely fantastic. And those shots, they're all digital. It's a completely 100% digital shot. All the mountains, the water, everything is when the dragons jump off the thing and she rides around, that's all CG. And it was done seamlessly. You can tell it's still CG because of the camera motion where it's either floating or flying. Usually they wouldn't shoot that because they would have to put it on a helicopter, and helicopters don't do that.
Yeah.
So things like that you can notice are, 100% computer graphics. So all those things were fantastic. And of course, any White Walker, all the Beyond the Wall where the zombie whites are running towards them, as they were filming it, they have in full costume and makeup, but certain, their arm would have a green on them, or
they were wearing like green suits under the prosthetics.
Yeah, exactly. So watching it, you can't tell what's what. You know it because they're skeletons, but other than that, it's pretty seamless of visual effects. So, all great. And I have to say, though, the budget on the visual effects for this season is probably the reason why there's 7 episodes, because...
that and the budget for the actors' salaries was insanely
more
high.
Than that, I can tell you that.
No, I know. I'm just saying
more.
The budget for a lot of things was insanely high, so they cut it down to 7 episodes.
Yeah.
I totally agree that the effects as a whole were incredible, especially, like you say, like whites, dragons, things that don't exist in the real world looked totally real. I don't know, though, about Casterly Rock. I felt like that was one of the weakest sequences, not just issues I have with it writing wise, but I felt like that seemed like one of the last things when they were running out of budget. It just kind of seemed like they didn't even take the time to like design Casterly Rock the way it's supposed to look. Like, it's supposed to be a mountain on the seaside with the castle built into the rock. And instead, it kind of just looked like a white, medieval times castle.
Well, it was a real castle, from what I read. Like, a lot of these locations are real.
Yeah, they definitely use a lot of real locations.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Casterly Rock did not come across that way. Like, you didn't get the epic shot that I think everyone who's read the books has in their head of like sailing up to Casterly Rock, and it's this huge, imposing golden mountain, you know, with the actual castle built into the mountain. But that whole episode, it definitely felt like, come on, we're moving to Act 2 of the season. We just need to hurry this along.
Yeah, they just kind of skipped it. They had to do it, so they got through it. I feel like they were like, how little can we spend on this? Money, time, energy.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lannisters abandoned Casterly Rock, so why should the show care about it? Right? That's kind of how they, you know, they didn't really spend a lot of time there, so it probably wasn't worth investing in it.
Yeah.
You know, visually, when they can just move on, and they really didn't spend a lot of time there, and they're probably not going to go back. Well, I mean, they might, but I doubt it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very disappointed by that, because I totally feel like, you know, like we've heard about Casterly Rock for 6 years now, and there's just such a huge image of it, and you're right, the Lannisters totally abandoned it. And then we get to Highgarden, which we also have not seen until now, and that seemed like the Tyrells essentially abandoned it. Like, was anyone else kind of furious when Olenna said, "Oh, fighting was never really our thing"? Really? The Tyrells? Like, one of the richest families, most powerful families, whom Loras Tyrell is said to be the greatest fighter in all of Westeros? Like, you didn't have an army that could stand up to what remains of the Lannisters after the War of the Five Kings? You guys are the reason that they won the Battle of the Blackwater and turned back Stannis. I don't know. That upset me.
I took that as she was downplaying her defeat, like, oh, I wasn't even trying, you know.
But why?
That's what I took from it.
Why?
So many characters in so many places that we have to go, and so many items that we need to know about that are omitted in the book, from the books into the show. That like by the time that if we see them now at this point, like I don't care about it.
Yeah.
I don't care about Highgarden. I don't care like the physical manifestation of it because I've never seen it. You've never made it important to me. You're going to show it to me right before you kill it.
Right.
I don't care.
No, exactly. And that's kind of my point. Like, why even show it then? You know,
and
if you're going to half-ass it.
Greyjoy, but you'll get to it
later. Oh yes, we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, it's just all of these things you can write around them to improve it. You know, like why did we even need to see Highgarden? You know, they could have simply said, like, the Tyrell forces are essentially destroyed, you know, or something like that. Like, we didn't need to see...
They could have had Gilly's little weird son, who's, like, between 2 and 12.
Right.
He could have been playing with toys. He's, like, with little, like, makeshift ugly toys. That, like, maybe there was a flower on one of them. Like a little castle that had a flower on it, and then he just knocks it over.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's symbolism.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I dig that.
There's him more. I like him. He's around.
Yeah. Yeah, or like, you know, with Casterly Rock, I really liked that they referenced Tyrion having, you know, a lot to do with the sewers of Casterly Rock because of his father being an asshole. But then, like, they're telling us this as the siege is happening, and I feel like everyone just forgot about it right away. Like, there were so many elements to those particular sieges and how quickly they were done that made it forgettable. You know what I mean?
It was also such a big failure, too, that, you know, that's part of it.
Yeah.
It was such a big fail for King Danny.
Right. They roll the 1 and risk.
Yeah.
And then to top it all off, they then show Euron and his fleet destroying, Targaryen fleet, when we just saw Euron at King's Landing earlier in the episode. Like, why even show Euron's ship? Why not have Euron offhandedly say, I still have so many ships at the Iron Islands, which is not far from Casterly Rock?
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like
I'm surprised that they're not still building all these ships, like 1,000 ships. Like the whole season probably took that long, right?
Yeah, no, and to top it off, the Iron Islands, doesn't really have much wood, so how did they build these ships? But, I mean, whatever. That's one of those things they just gotta do.
I actually really like that segment. That whole, the two battles, and how you saw them take Casterly Rock and then them marching. I actually really loved all that. I love the visual, like I was saying, the visual effects of the castles were fantastic. And I didn't want to have a symbolism of, oh yeah, BT dubs, we took Highgarden. No, why don't you just show it?
I mean,
and the whole point of that scene was to lead into Jamie talking to the girl.
Right.
So
Jamie
really, it's just icing on the cake. So it didn't matter how they did it. Just that was the point of the scene.
But you didn't feel like they kind of skipped a step in the designing of the castles? Because, to me, it's always been each castle of Westeros has a very unique appearance and look. Like, Highgarden is even described, but also, I imagined it to be this lush, fertile castle surrounded almost by like hedges, like Versailles, like something like that, with just tons of greenery and everything, and it just looked like a castle on a hill.
But it was the background had a lot of swamps and things like that. I mean, I thought the Highgarden was pretty cool. I think Casterly Rock was a little bit different than what I was imagining it, but
yeah,
there was only, I think, 3 shots of Highgarden, so.
And let's not forget that they claim that Tywin himself built Casterly Rock, which, what? No way. Casterly Rock has stood for thousands of years. It wasn't even built by the Lannisters. It was built by the Casterlys.
Okay.
That made no sense.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, Tyrion was like, my father built the castle up, after his father had, failed or something like that. And it's medieval castles took generations to build, centuries.
You honestly think
maybe that's what he meant?
Or was anything after the one but himself?
What was that?
You honestly think that anyone, like with Tywin Lannister, would name a castle not after himself or his family?
Right. Yeah, if he built his castle.
That is true.
The core of his being.
Exactly.
Or it's just a reminder to his enemies that how powerful he is.
What, that he would name the castle after another family?
Well, he never changed it, did he?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They claimed in the show that Tywin built Casterly Rock, but its very name, Casterly Rock,
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. My father built it.
Yeah.
He built everything.
Yeah, Tyrion said he built everything except the sewers, which he left to me. That was such a weird offhand thing. And it was why even say that?
Yeah, it is weird, considering that they were supposed to have grown up at Casterly Rock and all that.
Yeah, was it under construction while
I
they
don't know. a centuries-long construction that they only just finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even going back to the time issue that we've all spoken of, why claim that Jamie went all the way to Casterly Rock and then marched the army all the way to Highgarden? Why not have him and Cersei strategizing, and he says, I'll send a raven, You know? Like, instead they actually show us that he and Braun went off and marched the army south. It just didn't make sense.
I think people forget that they can send ravens.
Yeah, I mean, it is like Westeros's phone line system, essentially.
And they totally forget it all the time. Like, it's very, it's convenient when they need to get rescued by a dragon immediately on a rock. But for something practical, like you mentioned, nobody would send a raven. They ride thousands and thousands of miles or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
In 6 minutes.
Like, how cool would it have been if after Euron brings Ilaria and Yara to King's Landing, there's then a meeting of the small council, and Cersei, Jaime, Qyburn, and Euron is now part of the small council since, he's proven himself there, and they're actually strategizing as to how to get this to happen. And, like, you could even keep in, the supposed surprise factor of the Lannisters not being at Casterly Rock, where they're discussing, and you think they're discussing about how they're going to defend Casterly Rock, but they're actually talking about how they're going to invade Highgarden. Like, there would just been so many creative ways to make that make sense.
Sounds like another episode they have to add. This sounds like a 10-episode season.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. Like it wouldn't have to be that way.
And I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Stuff like that ended up being cut. I heard, I didn't watch it, but there was a scene that I think was seen kind of imagined would have happened last week, where like Sansa and Bronn and Arya compared notes, but it got cut out.
Yes. Okay.
So,
yeah. Let's go ahead and jump to the Winterfell plotline because I wanted to bring that up too.
I think there probably were a lot of important plot moments that got cut out for the sake of time and storytelling.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of things like that where it just was like big twists that you didn't always, you're like, wait, what just happened?
Right.
Like,
yeah. So I actually saw exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. There was a scene where Sansa goes to Bran and is like, I need your help. And like, I think that's all the scene really was supposed to be, was just her saying that. But it's like that would have helped the plotline so much because, I felt, as I said on the last podcast, that maybe they had known all along and they were just arguing to make Littlefinger confident, but apparently not. I did though like, Kristen, what you had said about Bran.
Gosh, what did I say about Bran? Remind me. I say so many things about him.
You said that the way he is able to like understand things, it's like the Dewey Decimal System.
Oh, he's a card catalog. Like he just he has no idea what he knows. He's not all of it. So he's just someone give him a direction, and then he's able to check it out.
Yeah. So.
That makes it more believable to me, I guess, because how incredibly overwhelming would it be, like in The Giver, how immediately that kid is given every piece of information and knowledge about the past. It's overwhelming, and I feel like it's a little easier for Bran to still stay human. In the last episode, he sort of seemed more human than he ever did.
Right.
But I mean, not much at all, but like a little. I feel like he might still be able to remain Bran a little bit if he's learning things piece by piece instead of just knowing it all.
Yeah, and I like that because it kind of gives a logic to what Bran knows, because I know I felt like, when they did the Jon is Aegon Targaryen reveal, I was like, wait, you didn't just listen the last time you saw this? Because, he had just seen that last season, and it's like, why didn't you stop and listen? But it kind of makes more sense if it's like he's been given a huge flash drive, like a 2 terabyte flash drive into his brain.
Like Chuck.
Right.
Chuck.
But now he still is a human and does have to like read through it all, in order to actually be conscious of what he knows. Like he can't, just because it's all up there in his brain doesn't mean he's aware of it all.
And I think he's figuring that out too, because it's like Three-Eyed Raven had been there and he hadn't screwed everything up so bad, he's an idiot, and perhaps like he would have been like, hey, here's how you know everything, here's how you're going to learn it all. He would have guided him on to how to swim, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And also it could, wait, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think we forget, because Isaac is so tall that Bran is still like a baby. He's supposed to be a little kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, or he isn't. I have no idea. Again, time is really mad. But like Bran's a kid, so it's not like he he didn't have all the information in the world, but he's still a child and still kind of, gotta learn things and figure things out as a kid for a bit.
Right.
Don't just you get all this wisdom, but how do you handle it? How do you cope with it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of my favorite aspects of Bran's chapters in the books. Like, George Martin really does a good job of getting into the head of a child. Like, when he encounters Cersei and Jaime having sex, he doesn't know what they're doing. Like, I think he literally thinks that they're wrestling or something. And just some sort of like explanation of what's going on with Bran would have been really helpful. Like, I can't really come up with a creative way to do it, but I wish there had been something so that the audience would understand. Because something I had mentioned in a previous podcast is like, Bran was acting totally normal last season. Like, he wasn't this crazy, super enlightened, three-eyed raven. And then he touched the weirwood with Benjen at the end of the season. And the next thing we know, he's all weird and catatonic this season. So it was an off-screen character change for the audience.
I thought in the show, once the old Three-Eye Raven died, his power just became amplified because now he is the Three-Eyed Raven. And I think that was visually explained by Hodar, about he was seizuring in 2 timelines. I was like, a boost of power, and that's what I took from that scene. That
right, but
now that he's become this godlike thing, and this is a good question for you, Mike. How old was the original Three-Eyed Raven?
Well, okay, so that's a loaded question. But first off, what I mean, though, is not so much how much he knew or how powerful he came, but just like the character of Bran and how he interacts with the other people. Like, after the Hodor thing, he was still acting very normal to Mira and Benjen, remember? Like he wasn't doing the blank-faced, I can only answer in riddles type thing, He was acting like normal Bran. I'm saying the change in like how he interacts with humans happened between seasons, and we didn't really get to see it. As far as the original Three-Eyed Raven, that is definitely something that they have changed from the books, because we actually know who the original Three-Eyed Raven is in the books. he's Bloodraven, who was Brynden Rivers, the bastard son of Aegon Targaryen IV, who was basically my favorite character. He was, to real briefly cap off his story, he was an albino bastard son of the king who became Hand of the King and was a Targaryen loyalist when his half-brother bastard got legitimized and was supposed to take the throne. It caused this whole Targaryen civil war called the Blackfyre Rebellion. And Bloodraven was actually on the side of the legitimate Targaryens fighting against his bastard half-brothers. And then, so he was basically, he was known for almost like Varys having way too much knowledge of the goings-on around the world. That's why he said, you'll see with 1,000 eyes and one. Because that's what they used to say about him, was that he had 1,000 eyes and one because his other eye was stabbed out by his half-brother Bittersteel. Bittersteel also founded the Golden Company, but that's neither here nor there. So Bloodraven then was this sorcerer, Hand of the King, manipulator, doing all this stuff within the Targaryen reign, and then because he used really brutal tactics to put down the last Blackfyre Rebellion, the king at the time, Aegon V, who is Egg from the Dunk and Egg novels, who was Maester Aemon's brother, told him, you've gone too far, you gotta get out of here. And so then he joined the Night's Watch, became Lord Commander of the Night's Watch briefly, then just kind of disappeared out of nowhere. And we now know he was going up to the Weirwoods and joined the Weirwood Net. But the thing is, in the show, they haven't talked at all about, the Blackfyre Rebellion or anything. And, he's not missing an eye. He's not an albino. He doesn't have the birthmark that Bloodraven was so famous for. So I don't think he's supposed to even be Bloodraven. I think it's supposed to be kind of a mystery who the original Three-Eyed Crow is. And one of the theories that I've heard is that that's Bran in the future timeline. He himself, after he gets old, will go back in time and join the Weirwood Net again and then meet his young self. Because remember he said, it's time for you to become me?
I thought that was just the transfer of power. I didn't think it was a literal.
Yeah, no, I don't know if this theory has any validity to it. I'm just saying I could see that being the case now that, they're getting pretty heavily into the multiple timelines thing.
There's also other theory that Bran is really the Night King, too, though.
Right, so maybe that's him in another timeline.
Which I don't believe any of those. I
have a hard time with that too.
I think Bran's just Bran.
Why I think Bran is not the Night King? Because everyone thinks Bran's the
Right.
There's an obvious split. I'm friends with my second grade teacher, but whatever. She sent me a picture the other day of Bran and next to the Night King, and they're wearing the exact same necklace and outfit, exact. And I just think, are they that dumb? They're not. This is not predictable ever.
Right.
We've had more time to everything, and it's getting to the end game that eventually things get tied up. We figure out these loose ends, but I just feel like it's too obvious in Bran, so it can't be him.
Yeah, it does seem.
Is your second grade teacher Bran in the future? I've heard that theory.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It's such a widespread theory at this point that it's almost because with the show, all these theories, there's not really legitimate evidence to back anything up. You know, it's more just like, this is what people think. And so then they use things like, oh, the clothes look similar. But it's like, that's not really legit evidence.
Yeah.
Because everyone wears the same clothes in this show. Particularly in the last episode, everyone's wearing black and leather. Like, oh, all right. Okay. They're all brand.
My one thought of that is the Night King has some kind of Targaryen blood, and my reasoning is, like, everyone else that deals with dragons died. Like, just straight up died. Dragons don't like anybody who's not a Targaryen.
Right. So therefore the Night King...
Yeah, has something. You know, there's not that many families. I feel like, although there are a million families, I feel like at the same time, I'll kind of come back down to those Matrix 4.
I could definitely seeing that be possible, but the thing that gives me pause on that is that like when they raise the dead, it seems like they establish like they're controlling the dead almost, like they establish kind of a telepathic link with them. And so I feel like that might get around not having Targaryen blood. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he actually raised Viserion from the dead, that now he can obviously control him because he is literally controlling him. But, and the other thing, well, that kind of ties, John Michael, you were saying that you think all the White Walkers are the Valyrians of old, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I can back that up, but I thought that would be a cool thing between, I'm just thinking about, Song of Ice and Fire, and all the magic that they possess is very similar to what the Targaryen or the Valyrians did, and the Valyrians are dead, and he's, coming back at the moment when the Targaryens are all dead. It just seems a lot of coincidence, and looking at the timeline, it would be a really interesting thing if this villain from all the books or all the seasons turned out to be another Targaryen or an ancestor of that. I think it would be a really cool twist. And the only one that can fight it is a Targaryen, which is Dany,
and Jon.
That could be the ending of the series, So
yeah.
I thought it would be interesting, but there's really little evidence I can,
Yeah, I mean,
to that.
Yeah, once again, this is one of those things where I could debate the point if this were the books, but since it's the show, it's entirely possible. I mean, the point of contention if this were the books would be the fact that the White Walkers are older than even the Valyrians. Like, the Long Night was supposed to be 8,000 years ago, and the Valyrians didn't rise to power until a few thousand years ago. The other obvious point of contention being that the Valyrians were, like you say, like fire, then the White Walkers are resistant to cold, so it's like, how did they go from one extreme to the other? But
yeah.
This is the show, so it's entirely possible they'll go for something like that. They don't have to answer for all the complicated mess that George R. R. Martin created.
Here's a good question, though, is what does the Night King want? What's his end game? Does he just want to kill everybody? Or does he actually want to sit on the Iron Throne? If it's just him killing everyone, or just killing the children of the forest, but they're all dead, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, his whole thing, in the show, he is clearly like, the evil lord of the undead. So I think he does just want to kill everyone and make them undead so he can be the lord of, everything. But, it's kind of a shame because part of, George R. R. Martin's whole thing, like he said this many times in interviews, that he, even though he loves Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, he feels that he wanted to write a story that was more true to real life, where the enemies are not these ugly horned beasts that are clearly the evil ones, and the good guys are your dressed in white, bearing the swords of their fathers and destroying, the evil army, and there's no conflict about killing them. And it feels like in the show they really haven't gone for that at all. Like the White Walkers are just a disgusting, ugly race. Whereas in the books, they're not described like that at all. There's very few descriptions in the books. That's another thing. Like, the books haven't really gone too deep into the White Walkers. There's the opening when, Waymar Royce and that guy who deserts end up fighting them. And then there's the battle at the Fist of the First Men where Sam is. But really, other than that, we don't see any White Walkers. I mean, Jon Snow does fight the one that comes into the Lord Commander's tent, or into Castle Black. But really, other than that, he's only communicating with Hardhome through Raven. Like, he doesn't know what happened at Hardhome.
The other thing I can think of, and this is just a wild theory, again with no basis or anything, is the Night King is marching somewhere, let's just say King's Landing, to resurrect a specific person from the dead. And in order to do that, he has to go through all the lands to get to King's Landing or Winterfell or, whatever. But his main purpose is to bring back a certain dead someone to life. And that is his main purpose. I don't know, I just feel like that would be really cool. Like, this whole strategy of this guy was just to bring back these two people or one person from the dead. Or the children of the forest. Maybe he's bringing them back from the dead. I don't know. I really don't know what this guy's doing. But it's awesome. He's got a dragon. This is great.
Yeah.
So the walkers were something early on too, and I remember in the early seasons, like, people who hadn't read the books would be all excited about them, and I'm like, yeah, but they were kind of not in the books at all.
Right. They're not the point.
They kind of, so it was always kind of strange to me that there was all this emphasis on these characters that weren't in the books yet. So
I've heard so many people be like, why hasn't winter come yet? And it's like, because it's not a story about fighting ice zombies. It's a story about complex succession and character interaction and political debates, and it's about so much more than a battle with zombies.
But now it is.
I think because of, like, they decided early on to make them something, because, like, Walking Dead is a thing, so I think they went with that choice.
Right.
And then it really doesn't seem like they have a plan for them. Because, like, why aren't they there yet?
They just got to Eastwatch. They've been marching for 2 seasons.
Just got there when everyone else has been traveling, ping-ponging all over Westeros this season. But the walkers, it's a lot. Like, it really just, it's very odd, their storyline, I think, and it always was one of my least favorite things in the series.
Mine too, to be honest.
TV show.
Yeah.
It really was. It was always one of my least favorite things. And a lot of people always thought it was so cool, and I think it's just because people are into zombies. And
I mean, I feel like I've had this not debate, but just disagreement with a lot of people who seem to love Jon Snow and his whole storyline, and I've always found his to be the most boring.
Mm.
You know, like he's the most basic, generic hero, and this is a show all about like defying the tropes. And not only is he a basic, generic hero, he's fighting a basic, generic enemy.
Mm.
And yeah, it's always been the least interesting part to me.
Yeah. I mean, in the books, it is more interesting with the wildlings and that whole storyline.
Yeah.
Illustrator, and I don't think they went into that as much, maybe. But that stuff is a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
The White Walker stuff.
Yeah, and like his whole his major conflict is, you know, trying to do the right thing when his vows are to the Night's Watch and he has to uphold their code, but at the same time, you know, he's has this debate, you know, when he falls in love with Ygritte.
Yeah.
He has this debate when he becomes Lord Commander and he wants to get the wildlings still across the wall to be safe from, and that's why he ultimately dies. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it is a little bit more interesting because they really go into the whole you can't please all the people all the time aspect of ruling. What? But you know, it's just the straightforward story, and that's why I feel like in the books it's going to lead to something totally different. But in the show, it kind of feels like it's just going to be, you know, Aragorn defeats the orcs, Luke Skywalker defeats the Emperor, Harry Potter defeats Voldemort.
Mike, Luke Skywalker does not defeat the Emperor. It was Darth Vader.
You're right.
Throwing that one out.
Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, there you go. Just continue.
Well, he destroys the Death Star. How about that one?
Yeah, he does that.
Yeah. But yeah, so going back over the season, especially like the finale, now that I've had more time to think about it, like, does anyone else feel kind of like some of the wrap-ups were a little bit rushed? Like, in particular, you know, Littlefinger's, and I'm doing air quotes, trial. Like, that whole thing, you know, the first time I saw it, and we had talked about this last week, how, like, it was like, yeah, I've been waiting for Littlefinger to die. Then I started to think about it, and it's like, it didn't make a lick of sense. You know, the things they were accusing him of, like, where to begin? So, no, go ahead. Someone else before I get into it.
I think that is another one of those, like, well, I think we talked about this a little last week. Like, they must have had a whole big conversation with all the lords of the North and all the guards before they brought Littlefinger in to, like, punk him, you know?
Yeah.
They had, because they really didn't have a trial. They were going on the words of the brand robot. And
yeah. Well, like, okay, so first they accuse him, you know, of killing Lysa, which Sansa saw, but Sansa had cried to, you know, the Lords of the Vale and Bronn John Royce that Lysa herself had gone mad and jumped out the window. And it was that lie that got the Knights of the Vale, like, on Sansa's side.
Yep.
So she just exposed herself as a liar to the Lords of the Vale. But yet Bronn John Royce was totally cool with it. Was like, yeah, no, Littlefinger's the asshole here.
Yeah. Yeah, he never liked him anyway, so he could die. Fine.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think anybody likes Littlefinger.
Right.
Littlefinger likes Littlefinger.
Exactly,
Littlefinger does really like Littlefinger. But then, okay, so then they accuse, you know, him of having Lysa kill Jon Arryn, which, how did they find that one out? You know, that
Bran
Bran's magical abilities, but do the rest of the Lords of the North and of the Vale just believe that Bran has all these abilities? Like, they never really established that as legitimate evidence enough to kill a man over.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to assume, these scenes that just didn't happen, but totally happened. That Bran was like, hey, now that I have all these cool powers, let's go figure some shit out. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse. I'm sorry. But if I can't curse...
No, curse all you want.
Great. Okay. So, Bran, again, is like this 9 to 20-year-old kid who's like, oh, I've heard all this shit I always wanted to know. Let's start searching. Like if you had all the answers, I'd start looking like, hey, how did my dad get killed? How did that happen? Because everyone loves him.
Right, but I'm not saying it's weird that they know that. I'm saying it's weird that everyone in the room seemed to buy Bran saying so as proof.
Do you think so? Like, do you think that everyone bought it? Because I feel like that's something that can be made with next season if they want to make it seem legitimate at all. And there's going to be a little backlash. Obviously, there should be.
It could be, and that would be really cool if there was. But this is the show, so I don't think that they have the time to have, that sort of complexity. But going even further, they then accuse him of betraying Ned, but he betrayed Ned in front of a lot of people. Remember when he was in the throne room and he held the knife to Ned? Like a lot of people know that. Also, it's obviously gotten out to the rest of the kingdom that Ned Stark had to have gotten betrayed, in order for that to happen. So Joffrey became the king, and Littlefinger was working for Joffrey that entire time. So how is this all of a sudden a problem now? Ned was perpetrating a coup on who to everyone else's mind was the rightful king. It's the same excuse as to why Sansa shouldn't have been blamed by Arya for writing that letter. She was under duress, and Littlefinger was doing exactly what a servant of the king should have been doing. And sorry, go ahead.
It was so murky, the whole situation with and Arya, and I don't know if you guys talked about it already, but you never knew, and I liked it, but still was frustrated by it about who was in charge and who was actually being legit, who was acting on real feelings in all of those scenes. Was Arya playing the whole time, knowing that Sansa wouldn't do this and was trying to fool Littlefinger into thinking that Arya didn't know what she knew? I'm still confused about it.
Yeah, when did...
I think Arya is too smart.
Yeah.
And I give her too much credit, I guess. She went through too much for her to not be able to see through his bullshit.
Yeah.
So that being do I really think that she was getting on Sansa's case? No, I think she was doing that so that Sansa would go to Littlefinger.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah. And I definitely think that, the amount that Arya knew was really, it wasn't made clear to us, the audience. I think it was legitimately all right to have them have that little fight because Arya is such a weird character at this point that we could see her having this angry, almost irrational dislike of Sansa during this. But then, it was kind of was she doing this all to play Littlefinger, or was she actually fucking with her sister, was she actually considering killing her?
No.
I think no.
You don't think ever?
Not a chance. I think that whole Winterfell plot line was just a poor display of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think they really, the whole point of it was to trick us, and it didn't pay off. Because there's a few, going back, watching it, there, like you said, Mike, there are a few things that didn't make sense in a way that if you were looking at it through the eyes that they are tricking Littlefinger. You know, they left the door open.
Right.
She excuses Brienne, which is the exact opposite of what Littlefinger told her to do.
Uh-huh.
So there's all these clues that were dropped, but as an audience, we were trying to lead into one direction, and they were like, oh, you know, we just Littlefingered the audience.
Yeah.
In the end, it just made it way more confusing than it should be, and it was just, it just didn't pay off.
Yeah.
That's what I think what happened to that whole Winterfell thing, because Arya knew, you know, she gave the evidence that, you know, the knife is one that, it's your knife that or was going to try to kill Bran, and there was never a scene where they told her that, so we must assume that she was told that.
Yeah,
so
by Bran.
it's just like all this stuff happened off screen, and it's for us to go, oh no, which I did. So,
and also, let's not forget that Littlefinger in the very episode where, you know, Cat brings the dagger to him, he says, "This is my dagger."
Mm-hmm.
You know, that like that was never a surprise. That's not weird. He then said, and it was won off of me by Tyrion Lannister. So for them to be like, this is your dagger, and it's proof that you had Bran killed, he could have just said, no, but I lost that dagger to Tyrion Lannister. I told your mom this. In fact, she brought Tyrion to the Vale to have him a trial by combat over this. And that was the other thing, though. Like, we had said last week, and I do still agree that it was cool that Littlefinger went out like a whiny little bitch, you know? But at the same time, that is Littlefinger to the core, who he is. But he's also an incredibly manipulative, intelligent, conniving, cunning person. So how come he didn't have excuses for every accusation they made? You know, like you would think, you know, the killing Lysa thing, the having Lysa kill Jon Arryn, the betraying Ned, the trying to kill Bran, the betraying Sansa. You would think he would have had in his head excuses for all of this, like, because he could have been confronted by so many people.
Everything he does.
Now you go ahead.
But sorry, thank you. You know, they're kids, and I think he underestimated what they were capable of, and he really thought, oh, he wasn't ever around Sansa and Arya together. I don't think to understand their relationship. So, like, how stupid and foolish is it to think, oh, well, you know, obviously Sansa, Arya wants to take your spot and be the Lady of Winterfell. Are you fucking kidding? That's her worst nightmare. She would never be put in back to one. If he like, paid attention to these unassuming children and treated them like people, then he probably would have said, well, shit, like, let me start thinking about them as other living, breathing thing in Westeros. And that's us. And maybe the non-breathing ones, too. I think he messed up. It was an Achilles heel moment. Like he wasn't looking there.
But
he never had the time.
I'm talking more about, like, not just Arya and Sansa. Anyone could have accused him of this stuff, you know? Like Littlefinger has had these plots and conspiracies going on the entire series. And I just don't see how he could have assumed nobody would ever accuse him of the things that he's doing. You know, it could have been the Tyrells. It could have been the Lords of the Vale. It could have been whoever, like the Dornish even. There could have been so many times that someone might have figured out one of his plans. Like, his whole thing with having, John Aaron killed, like, Lysa could have slipped up and told someone, and then he would have had to have had some sort of excuse for if that did get out, or if rumors started getting spread about that. I don't think it's very Littlefinger to assume everything is good. Like he said in this season, he always assumes the worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he did not expect that from Sansa, and that got him killed. So there it is.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's probably had backup stories for everything.
Right, but I think there was a point where he's like, if we could just talk alone, Sansa, maybe I could leave on my way out of this one. And
right.
He's like, no, I don't think so. He could have said anything, though, and Arya would have slit his throat. So I think he just got caught. He got his bridges down. So.
But I'm saying, like, that's
he's dead.
That's very un-Littlefinger to be caught.
I know, and he's dead.
Yeah, and just like I just wish his the whole Winterfell plotline was more like he's lying to them to like get them to pit each other against each other. Like the leaving the note out. Yeah, it was. I get it. It's a callback to the first season, which has been what they've been all about this season, is callbacks to the first season. But like Littlefinger's so evil. Like, he should have been doing way more to like get them to turn on each other.
Oh yeah. But I think it was the last episode last season where he confesses to Sansa that he wants to sit on the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
And
he's really not doing much to get to that.
Out.
Yeah. He's really not trying too hard anymore.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, you're going to die next season.
Yeah. And it's always kind of seemed like his route to get on the Iron Throne has been through Robin Arryn, Sweet Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And they've completely forgotten about him. He's down in the Vale.
Right.
I mean, he's still alive, right?
Yeah, he's still alive. He's still failing at archery.
Probably. He's probably like 32 now. They probably age him and bring him back or something. Who knows, right? Like,
yeah. Don't mix it some milk.
that actor that played little whatever his name is, little Aaron. He looked like the character on Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I always got really scared whenever I saw him because he was so uncomfortable.
Which character? I'm a huge Are You Afraid of the Dark fan.
This kid was like, he was like a regular. He was in like 6 or 7 different episodes, and he was just like scrawny and had black circles under his eyes. Like, someone feed him.
Yeah, I think I can picture who you're talking about. He's in like the werewolf episode.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I think we can all agree, like, the Winterfell plotline just could have been cooler.
Yeah. I think the whole point was just to bring them together and kill Littlefinger.
Yeah.
That was the whole point of that.
Yeah, and
they
didn't want to take too much time to make that happen.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do that next season. So
yeah.
Have
to wrap it up.
Set that up.
Yeah, which another thing that felt very much like that was John and Dany's, more air quotes, love story. Didn't it kind of seem like, why are they falling in love?
No, it's
aside from they're both hot.
Power, I thought that was okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, there were a few moments where I thought they had chemistry, like, in a creepy way, but,
Yeah.
you know, but
in a vanilla ice cream mixed with vanilla ice cream way.
But because it was so quickly that, you know, it just all happened so quick that it just, I don't know.
I mean, what they should have done is just like, you know, like the scene in the cave, I felt like was the closest they came to actually making it seem like they're falling in love. Like, just have like 2, maybe 3 more scenes of them talking to each other about each other's lives.
Yeah, or like that other scene in the cave at the big meeting in the finale when they were like off to the side talking together.
Yeah, like have John explain to her the difficulty he had with, you know, reconciling the wildlings and the Night's Watch. Have her talk to him about smashing the slave trade, and like they would bond over being good people.
Or how they both lost the great loves of their lives, you know? Like, like that would have been something to bond over too, that they could have. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, like it's there. Like it works on paper, I think, but it didn't work on screen too. Like, yeah.
I feel with Jon Snow being attracted to Mary, like I feel like it's a cop out because I don't think I've ever seen since Egret any other female close to his age that wasn't his sister.
Right.
Like, or Gilly, you know, like you don't see any of that.
Yeah.
Dudes all the time, and part of the reason I love the show. I'm kidding, sort of. No doubt, like she's a smoking hot babe, and he's gonna be into her, and I'm uncomfortable with just how much. Like, they haven't even gone on a date, and he's like, I'm going to put a baby in you. I don't care what you say. Like, yeah, I'm going to get you pregnant.
Seriously.
Like, maybe take her to dinner first. Buy her coffee.
Yeah.
Have
some Westeros ale.
Like, how many times did they have to reference, like, an heir, too? Or, like, that she couldn't have a baby, or that John, you know, didn't ever think he could have... Like, they just really hammered that.
Yeah.
Point. That too, like
you
just needed to say it once, and that would be it. And but they really just, I don't know, it got annoying, I think.
I feel like they don't give the audience enough credit in general. Like they really try and like beat you over the head with the foreshadowing. But yeah.
Wait, shadow it? What do you mean? Do you think they're going to get pregnant?
No, I'm sure there is no baby in Dany's future.
No.
No way.
I mean, that's just television. I mean, it's got to have foreshadowing. If not, what's the point?
No, but we're saying there was too much.
Yeah.
You know, like give us the hints, but make them hints.
Yeah.
Don't make them like a silver platter.
Well, when there were other conversations that were cut or not shown, that could have been replaced by them repeating that fact like 40 times.
Right.
You know? Like,
all the times that we keep saying they don't have time to do something, they could cut the unnecessary, and then they would have time to do these things.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest, though, I totally forgot she couldn't have kids until that conversation of Tyrion, which I thought was really cool because I didn't even think about that once she's on the Iron Throne, she can't have kids, and what happens next?
Yeah.
And it's been 7 seasons, and that thought never crossed my mind. They're like, yeah, Tyrion, that's a great question. That's a great question. And she's like, I'm not answering it right now.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe you should, because we're all here doing this for you. And I was kind of like blown. I was like, yeah, what is that? And that's the first time I heard about it. And there really isn't an answer to it. Just we still want Dany on the throne, so.
Yeah, I agree. It's a necessary conversation to have. It is definitely something that they needed to talk about. And you're right, for her to be like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now. It's like, you're spending literally your entire life, everything you do on taking this throne. Your heir is the most important thing after you die.
And you don't have an heir. You cannot have an heir.
You need to at least establish. And, you know, I really like Tyrion in that moment being like, you're always talking about breaking the wheel. Let's figure out what we're going to replace it with. And she's kind of being like, nah, I just want to break the wheel. It's like, okay, but then how is this kingdom going to function after you're not around?
Right.
Again, I like,
you know,
how old it's been 5 years, 6 years. She's still a freshman in college, and I knew nothing. He's still like a while ago, maybe a week ago. I just think that even if someone makes a really incredible, and she's made tons of really, she made a bunch of dumb ones too, but still a kid, like you said, I teach, and so some of my kids, they impress me with how smart they are, or some of their demeanors. But then once in a while, I see them play on the playground, and I'm reminded that they're all 9 and 10.
Right.
So I think she has no answer for Tyrion, and that's why she's like, oh, I'm not talking about it now. It's like, oh shit, I have no clue.
Right.
I've been too busy trying to not bang everyone around me because I'm turning everyone on.
Yeah.
And I've been too busy, trying to run thousands of people.
Yeah, it's kind of the old Joker thing. She's a dog chasing cars. Doesn't know what to do if she captures the Iron Throne.
But once we bring that up, and I thought about this after the last episode, like fairly recently, that when Tyrion asked her that question, she didn't have a response to that. I think in his mind, he's actually answering that question for her. And I know it wasn't shown, but there is a reason why they cut off that conversation between Tyrion and Cersei. The moment she goes, "Oh, you're pregnant," and then they cut. I feel like that conversation went on a little bit longer, where those two are now conspiring against Dany. Maybe not in a evil way, but maybe that they were conspiring to save the Lannister name, because if Dany's on the Iron Throne, what happens to the Lannisters? They're pretty much obliterated, with the exception of Tyrion. So there has to be a deal between her and Cersei and if she's pregnant, that's the heir to the Lannister name. So I think that triggered something in Tyrion where he's now working on both sides, when before that conversation he was all on Team Dany. So now he's on Team Lannister and Dany. So
yeah, Kristen, I think weren't we talking about this the other night?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remind me what you had said.
I'm chewing popcorn, so I'm going to just back. Sorry.
Okay. I'm just drawing a blank because I know we had talked about this.
Well, there was a lot of wine involved. I'm feeling myself.
Oh, I remember now. You were saying that it was like Tyrion, may have made a sort of deal like, hey, Daenerys can't get pregnant. You have a child. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, he knows his sister. Or at least, like, before this season he did, because he's lost all logic this season.
Right.
But he knows his, and, like, she's not just going to be like, okay, this is cool, let's all be friends, and let's all go after these White Walkers, and then we'll figure it out after that. We can go back to killing each other then. She's not going to do that, and he knows that. And by saying, again, you have a kid, maybe if you step down, but we say, Daenerys is done, your kid is up.
Right.
It's a possibility. It's one that I don't think will happen, but it's a cool idea.
No, I really like that, and I really hope it does happen. And because it also kind of explains why Tyrion was like looking so concerned when he sees them hooking up.
Yeah.
You know, it actually gives some reason to that, where we were all like, why is Tyrion creeping? So, yeah, no, I definitely like that idea. And I could see it being something the show will do.
I was thinking that in, though. It's a thing. How they will, like, relay that is great.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're getting near to our end point. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to talk about? Anything we missed? I mean, I know we missed a lot, but...
Like overall?
Yeah, overall. Or any little scenes you wanted to talk about that we haven't yet? Oh, I did want to say this. My least favorite part of the entire season, grayscale.
Oh, yes.
What the heck was that?
That was so stupid. We talked about that, I think.
Yeah, we talked about that on our
God.
episode, and now that that's over, and it really was just a one and done. Let's get it over with.
And just so stupid and just so unbelievable.
Yeah, and really made me feel sad that, because like the last episode of the previous season, when Sam finally gets to the Citadel and like we see that huge library and everything, I was filled with so much hope. And the old town story didn't really have much to it.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, there is no more old town story.
Yeah, that was
no glass
I don't
candle,
believe that.
no Maester Marwyn, nothing.
Okay, no, I totally disagree because they had that conversation with Jim Broadbent where he, was like, oh, but the White Walkers are real and all that. And he's like, yeah, but we've all survived. The wall's still here. Robert Baratheon had his rebellion. We're still here. The wall's still there. And he made such an emphasis that the wall's still there, right?
Yeah.
And guess what happened at the end of this season? The wall came down. So
you think that they'll go back to Old Town?
Yeah, maybe not him, but the Maesters are gonna, start getting a little bit more serious and trying to fight the White Walkers because...
I think with only 6 episodes left, we're not going to see the Maesters again.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't believe that. They built that set, so they get their money's worth.
Did they build that set? I think that library was CG.
Right, and they have all those models, so they're just...
They built that set on a computer.
It's going to be the scene in Two Towers where the elves came and they're like, oh, I couldn't believe it. The elves are here to save us. It's going to be like a row of Maesters with their chains dangling. Like, oh, the Maesters are here.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen.
Like the battle in Anchorman, they're all...
with all their hoods and stuff. I don't know. It's not done.
Yes.
They animated the opening title sequence to have that nice flame building. It's coming back.
I don't think so.
There were a lot of places like over the seas too that were in the intro. And Dorne, we'll never see Dorne again.
Yeah.
Dorne's a lost cause.
And I'm glad Dorne was stupid too. Glad they're gone. Over it. Just so over Dorne. Just don't care.
Yeah, and that's kind of another thing, like, when they were having the meeting, like, I thought that was going to be a meeting with all the remaining, like, lords of the different kingdoms, I was expecting, like, whoever is ruling Dorne at this point, whoever is ruling the Reach, whoever is ruling, all the different ones. I thought everyone was going to be there.
I think they're all out of power now anyway, so...
But that's what I mean. Like, it's such a big world, and like Cersei can't rule the entire kingdom. Like, all the day-to-day has to be done by, like, that's what feudalism is. And they've kind of given us the impression, and I get why, like, they can't keep spending time on stuff like that, but why not just have, you know, characters there dressed like the different kingdoms? Like, you don't even have to introduce them. You can just have them there. Like, here are the lords of Westeros.
True.
Well, we haven't seen the next season yet, so maybe they can do that.
But that's what I'm saying. Like why weren't they there? But anyways,
because then that's an extra $2-3
more money.
Yeah, they really didn't have the budget for another, you know, Dorne robe, another Dornish robe.
You could use one, right?
Yeah, someone just is wearing Doran's old bloody one.
Turn it inside out. It's fine.
That blood stain will wash off.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, man.
That's funny. So, do you have it?
Well, I just wanted to say, just like, I can protest that, you know, budget on a TV show is so important. You know, all the shows I work on, you work a certain amount of hours for a shot or a scene, and if it goes over, that money has to be taken out of the studio or someone else has to pay for it. And if they want to add on to that shot, they either have to up the budget or they don't do it. And I'd say, you know, 3 out of 5 times they say, no, we don't have the money, we'll just do it in editing. So it's amazing how much they propose in a TV show, and then that just never happens because they don't want to spend the extra $500 or $1,000 on time for artists and, you know, filmmakers.
I mean, I'm no accountant, you know, I can't claim to understand how they're allocating their money, but it's just like, these are the things that they actually did in the early seasons. You know, like when you look at like the amount of time they spent on like costuming, like go back to season 1, the last episode when Robb Stark is declared king in the North. They didn't take the time to introduce. They didn't take the time to like introduce all the characters and all the lords of the North who are there, but they still had them.
Yeah.
Right, but they're all dead now, so.
but that right? is exactly my point. Is like they've led us to believe that there's almost no one left in the kingdom. Like it just doesn't feel like a populated area anymore. like you know, the King's Moot was just 30 guys on a beach.
Yeah.
But does anyone want to give their final thoughts?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the Hound versus the Mountain next season.
Oh yeah, Clegane Bowl is on. Everyone get hyped.
I really just I don't know how things are gonna go or what could possibly happen, but I'm looking forward to that. That's all I have to say.
Oh, I don't know what to say. I'm super looking forward to it. I can't believe we have to wait this long. I can't wait for John and Arya to get together. I need these like lovely like moments. I need like Molly Weasley going after Bellatrix Lestrange. So I'm super pumped for that reunion. I'm excited for the Hounds to come. I'm excited for basically everyone to find Arya. I'm excited to maybe see Hot Pie again. It would be fun. Why not?
Yeah, you know Hot Pie will be back to fight the White Walkers with his hot pies.
We swing these little pies at them.
Excited to see just how they tie up as many loose ends as possible. I mean, I yes, there are so many errors in screenwriting and flying all over with jetpacks, but I do think that this is one of the most well thought out shows and stories I've ever experienced, and I can't wait to see like what did George R. R. Martin decide? Like, what's the end game? What is it?
Yeah.
Because there's so many topics and I can't wait to find out. So excited.
John Michael.
Well, I really like this show, and it's very hard for me to criticize it in a very negative way because it's just, I guess, all right. That's what, the biggest problem I had of the show was Uncle Benji coming at the end of Beyond the Wall. I was so into that episode until that happened. You're like, all right. He's not going on the horse. Oh, okay. Oh, he's dead. He's still dead. Oh, all right. All right, so the episode's over, I guess. That's, okay. And then a dragon came out and it became an ice dragon. And I was like, all right, we're back on this horse. So there's a lot of problems that I could nitpick, and I don't. I just brush it off. So I think overall this season was probably the weakest out of all of them. But it's still one of the best shows on TV, and I do look forward to it every 12, 13 months, I guess.
Well, now it's going to be 2 years.
Yeah, so again, it's like, geez. But it's definitely getting more cinematic, and when they don't rely on the book and the advice of George Martin, it has become more like movies, more visual storytelling, and I really do appreciate that. I like it that they show us the castles, and they have a 5-minute scene with no dialogue, and all that stuff. I can appreciate it as a film person. And as a final prediction of who's going to sit on the Iron Throne, I think it's going to be Podrick.
Pod?
Yep. You heard it first here. It's going to be Podrick.
His sexual prowess will climb him up that ladder.
I think everyone's going to die except for Podrick. And he's like, well, I guess I'm the last one, so...
I think it's everyone. I think Podrick and Brienne are the only
Yeah. That's valid. Very valid. Yeah.
They're all going to die. Everyone's going to die. That's my big... Except for Podrick. Except for Podrick. Because there's a reason why she's teaching him how to sword fight. To survive next season.
Of course. And he's learning from Brienne, who's one of the best.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
King Podrick?
Podrick.
Is that his last name or his first name?
Podrick Payne.
Podrick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's Ellen Payne's cousin or nephew or something.
Nephew.
Yeah, I thought he was related to the Lannisters somehow.
Well, the Paynes are a house of the Lannisters. Remember, Ellen Payne is the guy who cut Ned's head off.
Yeah. So he's probably related to them somehow.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, while I do give the show a lot of guff, I still absolutely just love the story of what's happening in Westeros, I just love the world of Ice and Fire, and any sort of criticisms I give are because I love it so much that I want it to be the best that it can be, and I'm never gonna stop watching it because of any shortcomings. I will continue to be there every single night as it airs. And yeah, I too am just looking forward to the final one. But the good news for all of you and for our audience members is that we're going to keep going with this podcast after, we'll maybe do one more show focused one, but we're going to dive into the books and all of the mysteries that are going on. We're going to actually do the explain part of the title, Explain of Thrones, and really go deep on the different houses and characters and mysteries and all the theories, all the fun stuff. So I hope you three will be joining me later. And I want to say good night to everyone else. From our throne to yours, this is Explain of Thrones.